Hi, everyone. This is Josh Applebach from Campo Verde High School cross country. And this is going to be my attempt at doing a virtual parent meeting. Normally, we would have had a parent meeting in the cafeteria where all parents and also students would be invited to come be part of a presentation and a question and answer time. This year is a little different, of course, and so, but still wanted to present some of this information to you, especially if you're new to our program. And so hopefully you'll find this informative, and hopefully also you can click the link that's attached to the email in which this presentation was sent so that you can do a little Q&A with us if you'd like to do that way, or if you'd like to just simply respond to the email and ask any question. We coaches would be excited to get back to you with answers to those. So let's go ahead and get started. On the screen here, you can see that I've posted the handle for our Instagram and Twitter account for the cross country team. It's at Run Campo. On those profiles, we'll tweet or post in stories videos and pictures and announcements. Sometimes like meet updates as the meet is happening. If we get live results, sometimes we'll be able to post about that. So if you're on social media and you're interested in seeing what our athletes are doing, at Run Campo is a place where you can do that. Quick little introduction of coaches. That's me. I'm in my I think 13th year of coaching cross country and track, my 11th year at Campo, and it's been an honor for me to get to work in this community with our students, athletes. They are fantastic. Had a lot of fun over the course of the last 11 years here at Campo, essentially starting the program from the ground floor and enjoying watching many students come through our program and hopefully be transformed on the other side of it. It's been a really great experience for me. I'm excited to be continuing to do this. Yeah. A little bit about me beyond that. I recently completed a master's degree in human movement science. And so I'm passionate about sports conditioning, and I really enjoy geeking out on all the science that goes on behind performance, physical performance. So I'd love to be able to meet you at meets. So if you're a new parent to our program, and I may not recognize you right away, I'd love for you to introduce yourself, and I'd love to be able to get to know all of our parents because our athletes are so great. That must have come from somewhere, and it came from you guys. It came from you parents. So I'd be excited to meet you all. This is Andy Jeanson. Andy Jeanson has been with our program for a while now. I want to say he may have started with us 2013, 2014. Andy is a fantastic athlete himself. He participated in track and field, and I believe also cross country when he was in high school in Illinois. And he's a fantastic distance runner. And when I say distance, I really mean that. He runs a marathon a month. He's done many ultra marathons. He does lots of trail running. He's done Ironman for triathlon. Usually when we have a 5 a.m. workout, he's been there for an hour already, and he's put in, 8 to 10 miles before we even get started. Andy's taught math at our school for a long time. He's now at Chandler Gilbert Community College just down the street teaching math. Andy is great at cheering on our kids at meets, particularly, there's been a lot of times at meets where, a lot of the pack will run past. Andy stays put, and I've seen Coach Jeanson cheering on the kids who are, maybe the last ones through a particular checkpoint in a race. And I love that about him. He's mindful of all athletes on our team, which is really great. He's knowledgeable about nutrition and health, and just great person to have on our program. We're super thankful to have Andy Jeanson still with us after these years. So thank you, Andy. And parents, get to know Andy. He's great. This is Jenna Marsh. Jenna Marsh is also a fantastic distance runner, marathoner, has done some Ironman as well. Jenna Marsh brings a really unique perspective to our group. She's very, very good at, I would maybe say, social intelligence, being able to understand where our athletes are coming from, beyond just simply as athletes, but really kind of the social, emotional aspect of our athletes. She's really good at connecting with them in that way, and provides a really great support, particularly for our young ladies on our team. Yeah, Jenna's fantastic. Super excited that she's part of our program, and also excited that she roped in her husband. So this is Dylan Marsh. Dylan's been coaching with us for a few years now. Dylan is a fantastic athlete, also a marathoner, has done triathlon as well. And Dylan is really knowledgeable about the sport, and he's also really knowledgeable about the running community at large. Does a really great job of, I think, bringing together what our sport is on a big global scale to what we do at Campo. He's really, really great with our, faster end guys because he can train with them. And most of us coaches have trouble keeping up with our faster athletes. And Dylan can be up there with those fast athletes and still be able to speak and coach them while they're running fast. Dylan's a great friend, and we're really excited that Dylan is part of our program. And then Coach Tamura, he began coaching with us last year, I believe it was. Coach Tamura has actually really been with our program for about 6 years now. His son, Christian, was a varsity member of our program, currently running in college. And Jason has played a huge role in filling in some gaps that we were missing as a coaching staff, particularly with I guess you would maybe say like physical therapy type stuff. Coach Tamura is really great at being able to understand how to support athletes who may be experiencing an unusual sensation, like an onset of an injury. If an athlete says, "Hey, my hip is kind of hurting here," or "My knee is bothering me there," Coach Tamura is the go-to guy. He's equipped with bands and ropes and all kinds of other things to be able to help athletes and provide them some initial support, unless we need to send them on to our sports medicine doc here on campus or beyond. But Jason is a really great, maybe you would call him first responder in some of those kinds of situations. Incredibly fun man, very thrilled that he's part of our program. A guy of integrity. I really love getting to work with Coach Tamura. So that's our coaching staff. If you, like I said, if you have an opportunity to go and introduce yourself to one of these coaches at a meet, we love getting to know our athletes, but we also really love being able to connect with you, the parents, our community, really the support team that goes behind what we're doing here as a program. So we'd be excited to meet all of you. So why do sports in high school? Like, why do high schools even have sports? Well, there's some tangible life lessons that come along with being involved in an athletics team. And so those life lessons sometimes are best taught through athletics, in my opinion. Things like learning how to meet disappointment and get on the other side of that with some growth intact. And so there's a variety of things I could speak to about that, but there's some tangible life lessons that come along with athletics that we feel like are valuable, and athletics do a unique job in teaching those things. As a team, being able to set a common goal and work to achieve those common goals, and do that with peers, I think is huge. We also are really hopeful that, despite this year's, we have some limitations on this. Providing student athletes, with a opportunity to make social connections with friends, I think is a really valuable thing that happens with high school sports. In typical years, we do team dinners, and the kids have get-togethers that happen outside of practices. We do a California trip to run a meet out in California. It's a big overnight deal. We do a summer camp. Now, again, some of these are things that we have had to put on the shelf for this season, but still providing athletes with ability to connect with one another and make friends is, I think, a big part of why we have sports in high school as well. So this is a parent meeting. I'm hopeful to be able to pass along some information for you about how you might be able to get involved and be able to do a great job of supporting your student athlete or athletes. One thing is, as we hope that as coaches, Parents will give us the space and the trust necessary to do the coaching, and that parents would be encouragers. That you would encourage your athletes to give their best effort, whether that be when they're at practice or when they're at home, because part of what they do as athletes involves hydration, nutrition, recovery. Those things happen at home, and you can encourage them in that space. But to see your role as someone who just cheers on your kids rather than trying to coach them up. We've had some. I've observed firsthand as a coach. I've seen some parents who maybe push their student athletes in ways that is maybe meant more for a coach, and then athletes have a tendency sometimes to maybe disengage in that setting. I'm not saying that's the case for all families and all dynamics between parents and athletes, but if you there's some way that you feel like we could do a different approach to coaching your student athlete, we are definitely open to having a discussion with you guys about that. If you know your student athlete much better than we do, and so any sort of insight you could give us would be great. We love the coaching to come from coaches and the encouragement to come from both coaches and parents in particular. So that's one role in which parents can play a huge role, is to encourage your athletes. We have a booster club. Catherine Jones, Karen Lloyd, Kim Mask, and Olivier Altisti. They are our incredible support team. They do a lot of the behind the scenes stuff for us. You've probably heard from Catherine Jones through email. Undoubtedly, you've probably met one or more of these women who are doing an amazing job for our program so far this season. And so if you can find a way to help them, I know that they would appreciate that. This year, our hands are tied a little bit with some of the things we're doing with our athletes, so in a social aspect. But if you could reach out to them, they would appreciate the help for sure, and so would we as coaches. Tax credit donations. So you can make a donation to our program of $200 for an individual or $400 for a couple that files their taxes jointly. That $400 that you donate to our program can be used by us in ways that other money cannot be. So this is money that is valuable to us for continuing to provide what we provide for our athletes. I'll speak more to that in just a moment. But the reason why I call this a donation is because really what you're doing is you're letting the state of Arizona borrow the money to give to our program, and then the state of Arizona will pay it back to you when you do your taxes. That's probably the best way of looking at it. So if you and your family, you donate $400 to us this season, that comes out of your pocket initially. And then when you do your taxes, regardless of how much you owe, you get that $400 straight back to you. It's not a credit, it's not like a write-off or anything like that. It's literally a credit that comes directly back to you. So it truly is, you're credited that amount. So even if you pay less than $400 in state tax, you'll still receive $400 back. So if you'd like to make a tax credit donation, there's a way that you can do that online. There's also a way you can do that here at the high school. And so if you have the ability to do that, I'd appreciate it. Our fantastic coaches that I just introduced you to, our assistant coaches, Dylan Marsh, Jenna Marsh, and Jason Tamura. We love to be able to reimburse them for at least their gas, to be able to give them some sort of a reimbursement for the time and the money that they invest. We cannot provide any money from the school for those coaches. We cannot provide money from the booster club for those coaches. The money that we give to those coaches, it's a small amount in comparison to the time that they invest. That small amount that we give to those coaches as a token of gratitude comes specifically from tax credit donations. So we hope that if you see the value in what we're doing, that you'll provide that donation to our program, specifically to give to those coaches, although we can use that money for many other things as well beyond that. But let's say that you use that tax credit money to pay your students fees for other things. There's other ways. Maybe you've got other children that you give that money to their programs. Totally understand that. One way that you can help us out, if your family is already maxed out at that $400 amount, One way you can help us is if you have a neighbor or another family member, or neighbors, plural, family members, plural, that live in Arizona, pay Arizona taxes, yet don't have a student in high school themselves that they give that money to. We would love for you to encourage them to consider giving to our program as well. Not only will it inform our community about what we're doing with our student athletes, but it supports what we're doing too. So thank you in advance for those of you guys who do that for us. It makes a huge difference. Then the last way is through nutritional support. You parents are the ones who are providing the majority of the nutrition for your athletes. They'll get their nutrition from school here occasionally, and other things like that. But you make a lot of the nutritional decisions for your athletes. And so, how can you do a good job of supporting them in that way? There's a lot of different things we could dive into with this, but to make it as simple as possible, we encourage our athletes to consume natural, unprocessed whole foods. Essentially, if students can fuel their bodies with foods as close to the way that nature intended those foods to be eaten by our distant ancestors, the better it is for our overall health. So this looks like shopping in the grocery store around the perimeter of the grocery store rather than in the center. The center of the grocery store is where you find foods that are in boxes and things like that, where they've been processed in some way. But the perimeter of the grocery store has foods in their natural forms, at least as close to natural as we can get with the way that we eat in the United States in 2020. But natural, unprocessed whole foods is a really great start. When students finish a workout, their bodies can really benefit from protein, and in particular, dairy-sourced protein. Dairy-sourced protein is high in the amino acids that our bodies use for mitochondrial biosynthesis. Essentially, the subcellular components that support the training that an endurance athlete is going through. The nutritional foundation in dairy-sourced protein is superior. There's a window of about 40 minutes or so after rigorous exercise, where if an athlete consumes dairy-sourced protein in we're talking about like 30 grams, so a relatively small amount, maybe even like a cup of milk, is a really great support for rebuilding tissues, building mitochondria and muscle cells that helps to support the training that they're doing. So one way to think of it is 30 grams within 30 minutes is something that some people say. In the past, after tough workouts, we used to always have chocolate milk, where parents would come and they'd have gallons of chocolate milk and they'd be pouring in cups. We were a little unsure about whether or not that would be an overstep on our part, just with the safety concerns, the health concerns we have right now in our community. And so, if student athletes can arrive with their protein recovery and consume it when they're done, that sort of thing would go well. Perhaps you could reach out to our booster club and find out about bringing little prepackaged chocolate milks. Like at Costco, they sell the boxes. Something like that perhaps we could do for our athletes. I'm kind of thinking out loud here, but if our athletes are able to get that nutritional support, that's kind of a step in the right direction. Health and safety. Oh, and by the way, about nutritional support, last thing I'll say here is if you have questions specifically about this, we've had athletes in the past who have said, hey, I want to take my training really seriously, and I want to do everything I can to do everything as perfectly as possible. If you reach out to us, we can do that. We've had athletes in the past who have actually done beetroot juice consumption. Coach Tamura has been like our beetroot juice guy, and families have sort of worked with him to have him provide beetroot juice made in his kitchen for athletes. So there's all kinds of things that we can do to support our athletes nutritionally, but different athletes have different goals. And so not everyone necessarily even cares to go to some extremes that other athletes do. But if you want more support in that, we'd be excited to help you out with that. Okay, health and safety. So one big thing is hydration. We work out early in the morning or in the evening to try to avoid the heat of the midday sun. And so part of that is making sure that our athletes are not facing any sort of heat-related illness. And hydration helps with that as well. We want to make sure that our athletes are aware of how hydrated they are when they arrive to a practice. When we work out at 5 in the morning, part of what that means is making sure that they've had a lot to drink the night before, that when they arrive, that they are already hydrated and ready to be able to work hard for an hour and 20 minutes. So hydration is very important. It moderates temperature in muscle cells and buffers acid. Hydration is a really big deal for an endurance athlete. Footwear, we say that athletes should probably have a new pair of shoes every 400 miles or at least 4 months. So if a student athlete is wearing a pair of shoes for more than a few months, they're probably putting themselves at undue risk for overuse injury. And so the best way to safeguard against that is by having a fresh pair of shoes. Now, running shoes aren't cheap. I understand that they're expensive, but they're a lot cheaper than paying an athletic fee and then being sidelined for part of the season, or having doctor's visits here and there to find out what's going on with a knee or a hip or something like that. So properly fitted footwear that is fresh footwear is an important aspect to what we do. There's very little equipment that's involved in our sport. Footwear is kind of the big one. We have a great support at Cadence Running Company. They're located on the northeast corner of Gilbert Road in Pecos, and all of the staff that works at Cadence is fantastic. They're all endurance athletes, distance runners, and they know everything about shoes. They'll put different pairs of shoes on your student athlete, have them run through the parking lot, and watch the way that their biomechanics look in that pair of shoes. They'll be able to explain to you why one pair of shoes is better for your particular body type than another, the way that your body's moving, your biomechanics, I should say. And so they'll do a really great job of making sure that our athletes are in the right shoes, not just in the shoes that look the best. So, they're a little bit more expensive at Cadence than you would find at a place like Dick's Sporting Goods, but the service you're going to get is unparalleled, and it's worth the price to get your shoes at a place where they know what they're talking about. As parents, I think this is the last thing on this list. As parents, you can do a wonderful service for your student athletes by just simply asking them how they're doing. So I know that sometimes teenagers want to shut off a little bit, and maybe they don't express themselves that well with their parents. I know I was a little bit that way when I was in high school. But if you ask students, questions about, hey, how did the workout go? That's maybe a question that might be met with, yeah, it went well. If you say, hey, how are you feeling? That's a question that is often met with a different kind of answer, because we're looking for, how do you feel emotionally? How do you feel psychologically? How do you feel physically? Is your body feeling broken down? Are you feeling stressed out by school and work? Or school, possibly also work, and running as well. Our athletes can be under a lot of stress, psychological, mental, emotional, and physical. And parents can be a first line of defense in asking students how they're doing and being able to help them to guide themselves away from overstress. So for communication between parents and us coaches, runcampo.com is a website where I post a lot of information. On that website, under training, there's a link to the Google spreadsheet, which I almost always include in my weekly emails. That's got information about where we're going to be and when. There's also a calendar on the website. There's a meet schedule on the website. The meet schedule on the website has links to Google Maps to show you exactly how to get to our meets if you're going to be attending them or dropping your student athlete off. Runcampo.com has an amazing photo gallery. We've had parents from cross country and track who have taken great photos of our student athletes, and we've been able to post some really great photo galleries from our meets of your student athletes on the website. So the website is a really great resource to go and check out what's going on. I alluded to this, the weekly emails. I try to send these out on Saturday night or a Sunday. And then on some weeks, it may happen that there's not enough new stuff going on or nothing pressing that I may skip an email. But for the most part, once a week or so is about when you should expect to get an email from me with tons of information in it. Your student athletes get that email also. And then in the past, I've also had a remind set up for sending out text message to parents. You would simply text the code at CVXC parent to the number 81010, 81010. And if you do that, it'll sign you up for my Remind list. I haven't sent reminders through Remind in a little while, but if you're on that list and there's some sort of an emergency where I need to get a hold of parents and communicate something on short notice, that may be a better way for you to hear from me than by email. So if you'd like to sign up for that, definitely feel free. Also, we have an Instagram and Twitter account, which I mentioned earlier, which is at RunCampo. Now, at the beginning of the season, on the very first day that we had our official day, we talked about some team agreements. These are 6 things that we're asking our student athletes to stack hands on with each other and with us coaches, and we want you parents to be aware of these things as well. The first one speaks to honor and respecting others, basically representing themselves in a way that is honorable to themselves, to their families, to their school, to our program, to our community. And so we speak to that a little bit with item number 1 on that team agreement. The next one is about effort and having a high level of engagement. So this is another thing that we're expecting from our athletes is that when they show up, that they give their very best effort. We know that athletes arrive to our program with different goals. Some athletes are, hope to be a state champion or to make the varsity team or to run in college someday. Some of our athletes are there to meet new friends and to be able to get some exercise. Regardless of what the goal is, though, we hope that athletes are giving their best effort toward those goals and engaging in the journey in a way that brings fulfillment to the process that we're doing here. Number 3 is about trustworthiness. Essentially, we're asking students to be someone who can be counted upon, and so we need athletes to stack hands with us on being honest and also being punctual, things like that. Those are all related to being trustworthy. Next one on the list is we want athletes to be others oriented. And that looks like thinking about the team and a person's teammates in addition to oneself, but perhaps even seeing your teammates as having greater importance in some settings. Socially being able to see that what we're doing as a team is valuable. And while this is an individual sport and we have individual goals, that we also are doing this alongside others. And so we want to be able to be others oriented. This is part of the reason why we end many practices by doing what we call bucket filling, where students will stand and encourage others. You can't stand and encourage others, and you can't do that if you are completely focused on only what's going on within oneself. And so we're trying to encourage athletes to see others and appreciate and show gratitude for others as well. So that's number 4. Number 5, academically focused. So one of the things we're asking our students to do is to prioritize their learning over the participation for cross country. And so we've asked our athletes that if they're not doing well in a class, that they would excuse themselves from our team if needed in order to be able to do a really great job with their academics. Maybe that's just for a single practice here or there to be able to make sure that they're getting good grades in their classes, or potentially even missing a week if possible, if needed. Now, our school has guidance for us coaches on when students can and cannot participate based on their academic performance, but we're hoping that our athletes will choose whether or not to engage on their own accord based on what they see going on with their own academics first, before coaches even have to get involved in that. We also will begin doing our bi-monthly grade checks where they'll have their teachers sign a note saying, yes, this is the grade they're getting in the class and here's some feedback. And then we coaches look through those and make sure that everyone is doing well in their classes. The last one is being success driven. So we want to be a program that strives to achieve goals, essentially. Success driven doesn't necessarily mean success in racing. It also means success in other aspects of what we do. And so, this is a broad scope kind of a thing. We will have a banquet at the end of this season. Don't know exactly what that's going to look like yet, if it's going to be an in-person banquet or not. But at the end of the season, we'll have a celebration of sorts where we'll be able to highlight the successes of individual athletes and of the team. And so we want athletes to be focused on success in whichever way that they measure that. And so we talk a little bit about that as well. There's a school bus. This has to do with something else, but this year we're not riding on school buses that much. I think we have one bus ride to one meet, and that's Friday, October 1st, down in Queen Creek. I think that's one of our only meets that's actually not in the immediate vicinity of where we live this year, which is highly unusual. But usually I think I speak to bus rides and all that, so whatever. Our Booster Club does a ton of really great things for our program, as I already mentioned. They, on typical years, they help to organize our pasta dinners that we do for our athletes, and they also do these chocolate milk Mondays and whatever. We're not doing a lot of those things this year in order to maintain safety in our community. But let me just highlight once again, we're looking for parent volunteers. If you think there's some way that you can help out our program, we would love to be able to hear from you. Please reach out to our Booster Club. Their information is on runcampo.com under the Booster Club link. On typical years, again, we do pasta dinners, milk for athletes, especially after our challenging workout days. If you have ideas about how you might be able to support our program, our Booster Club would love to hear from you as well. So I want to thank you for your time. I know that this is unusual to be doing a parent meeting this way, but hopefully if you had questions, they may have been answered. If you didn't have questions, hopefully you've learned a little bit about what our program is about and what we are aiming toward as a program. You may have specific questions about meets and things like that. And so if you have those questions, love to have you reach out and ask those by email or by filling in the Google form that's attached to the email that I've sent with this video. So thank you very much. Again, really appreciate you. Looking forward to a really great season. Thank you.